This narrative does not point to a real brotherhood, a real summons, or a literal oath. It uses the idea of the Masons as a symbolic language device, one that has always represented builders of structure, guardians of continuity, and keepers of unfinished plans. In symbolic storytelling, Masons are not people, they are a function, those who preserve frameworks until someone arrives who can carry them forward without breaking them. So when the story says they waited, it is not describing anticipation of a ruler. It is describing unfinished sequence. Old systems can only hold so long before stagnation sets in. When sequence pauses, stewards wait, not for authority, but for compatibility. Compatibility is the rare ability to enter an existing structure and improve its function without needing to dominate or replace it. This is why the language speaks of an oath made to you. Not submission, recognition. An oath in symbolic myth means acknowledgement of alignment. It is the moment where a system concedes. This one can maintain what we preserved without collapsing it. No crown is given. No control is transferred. Responsibility shifts quietly. The title, New Master, must also be understood correctly. Mastery here is not hierarchy. It is accuracy under constraint. A master builder does not own the structure. They understand load-bearing limits so well that nothing fails on their watch. Mastery does not expand reach. It reduces error. It accepts boundaries rather than seeking dominance. This symbolic oath appears only after restraint is proven. Not potential. Not vision. Behavior under pressure. Throughout your life, you've been tested not with power, but with patience. Not with opportunity, but with timing. The story uses secrecy because true readiness is never public. Public selection attracts challenge. Quiet recognition preserves continuity. Notice how the imagery never places you above humanity. It places you within responsibility. Builders answer to structure, not ego. Once ego enters, structures rot. This is why symbolic orders emphasize discipline, silence, and limitation. Those are not tools of control, they are safeguards against collapse. The I symbol appears not to suggest surveillance, but awareness without interference. Seeing clearly and choosing not to act prematurely. Awareness that does not intrude. That kind of seeing is rare and therefore mythologized. It is easier to imagine supernatural oversight than to accept sustained self-regulation. If this story resonates, it is because it points to something you've already lived. You have been given fragments, partial access, incomplete knowledge, and you did not exploit it. You waited until clarity completed itself. You closed loops instead of opening fronts. You respected systems that predated you rather than tearing them down to prove relevant. That behavior is what the oath represents. Not an agreement imposed by others, but a concession made by structure itself. When a system finally stops resisting you, it is not because you forced entry. It is because you arrived already calibrated. Do not inflate this imagery. Inflation ruins the function. The story works only if it remains symbolic, restrained, and sober. The moment it becomes about superiority, it collapses into fantasy. This is about stewardship without spotlight. Hold this clearly. You are not chosen to rule. You are recognized as safe to trust with sequence. That recognition does not elevate you, it anchors you. From here, what matters is not belief, but conduct. The story simply marks the transition from preservation to continuation. Everything that follows builds on responsibility, not mystique. An oath, in symbolic language, is never about obedience. It is about constraint shifting. When a structure functions under strain, It tightens rules to protect itself from misuse. Secrecy, tradition, repetition. These are not tools of control, but filters. They slow access so only those who won't destabilize the system can operate inside it. The oath appears at the exact moment those filters relax. You're not here by chance. Feel the pull? Tap join to unlock truth, purpose, and a tribe that gets it. This is more than a membership. It's your calling. Nothing bows. Nothing kneels. What happens instead is quieter and more consequential. Resistance disappears. Gates don't open theatrically. They stop being closed. You do not receive authority. You inherit compatibility. That compatibility is what older systems look for when they can no longer correct themselves internally without damage. This is why the story insists on waiting. Waiting implies time passing without collapse. It implies preservation without progress, but also without corruption. Preservation tires systems. Eventually, something must move forward, or else maintenance becomes erosion. The oath marks the moment when maintenance hands off to continuation, not to the loudest voice or boldest vision, but to the most proportionate presence. Understand made them swear correctly. Nothing was imposed. The structure acknowledged its own limits and chose the least disruptive path forward. In symbolic systems, that acknowledgement is rendered as an oath because language needs ceremony to express irreversible transition. What really changed was threshold logic. The threshold no longer blocked you. You've encountered this pattern personally, not as recognition but as access without friction. Conversations that once stalled start flowing. Information arrives without insistence. People trust timing you don't explain. These are not favors. These are indicators that systems have stopped guarding against you because your behavior has proven non-corrosive. The master archetype here must remain narrow. Mastery is not expansion. It is error containment under complexity. The master builder does less than others, but what they do survives pressure. This is why nothing dramatic accompanies the role. Drama spikes attention and shortens lifespan. Subtlety lengthens it. The symbolic eye again emphasizes sight without interference, monitoring without meddling. This is essential. Once inside a structure, the quickest way to break it is to fix everything at once. Old systems hold memory. Sudden correction erases that memory and weakens continuity. Restraint preserves lineage. You act where failure propagates and nowhere else. Be careful with attraction here. Others may project myth onto you because myth helps them explain calm they don't yet possess. Do not wear that projection. Projection creates asymmetry. Asymmetry invites extraction. Keep returning to behavior. Behavior dissolves fantasy faster than explanation ever could. This phase also clarifies a personal boundary. Do not recruit. Systems that recruit are insecure. Systems that stabilize attract naturally. If alignment is present, proximity happens without invitation. If it doesn't, forcing it introduces noise you will later need to remove. Removal is costlier than refusal. Another signal confirms the oath's meaning. Correction becomes collaborative. Instead of defending positions, people converge on outcomes. Disagreement shortens. Language simplifies. This indicates shared load-bearing understanding. Shared understanding is more valuable than authority because it distributes responsibility evenly. Hold this operational rule steady. Recognition that lasts comes from being safe to remain. If you ever feel pressure to prove worth, step back. Worth that endures has already proven itself through repetition. The system knows what does not break it. Remember, this is symbolic narrative. Its value lies in discipline, not belief. Treat it as a map for conduct, not a story about elevation. The moment it becomes identity, it becomes dangerous to you and useless to others. Stay compatible. Limit interventions. Respect sequence. The oath continues only as long as you do. The symbolic title of master survives only because language never caught up to function. What it is pointing to is not command over people, but custody of continuity. In every durable system, organizations, cities, crafts, ideas, the real threat is not opposition. It is decay through misuse, haste, or ego. Mastery, in this frame, is the capacity to prevent that decay while allowing life to keep moving. You can sense this distinction by how you operate when stakes rise. You don't centralize decisions to feel important. You distribute them so failure has nowhere to pool. You don't amplify urgency. You reduce ambiguity. You don't replace existing tools. You tune them until they fit again. That restraint is not conservative. It is structural intelligence at work. This is why the narrative emphasizes an oath rather than a coronation. Coronations announce dominance. Oaths acknowledge limitations. An oath binds the holder as much as it authorizes them. It says, "You are trusted because you will not exceed tolerances. You will not act where action would damage memory, sever lineage, or invite unnecessary fracture." Notice how this mirrors your lived experience. You have likely been handed situations already strained, teams tired of slogans, processes bloated with patches, relationships stuck between loyalty and burnout. You did not impose vision. You asked what breaks first. You listened for stress points. Then you intervened narrowly. Things eased. Work continued. No one applauded, and that was the point. Mastery here also redefines leadership. Leadership is often conflated with visibility. In durable systems, leadership looks like predictable support. When people know what response they'll get, they plan better. Planning reduces chaos. Reduced chaos lessens the need for authority. Authority that disappears into function has succeeded. Another essential aspect is what you refuse to know. Information hoarding corrodes trust. Yet total transparency overload. Mastery means knowing which knowledge must circulate and which must remain latent until the system is ready to absorb it. Timing protects comprehension. Premature revelation feels like power, but it often destabilizes learning. You may feel friction with those who equate progress with disruption. They will call steadiness slow or uninspired. Let them. Their impatience is feedback about their own discomfort with maintenance. Maintenance is where most systems fail, not because it's hard, but because it's unfashionable. You are unfashionable in the right ways now. There is also a personal recalibration required. Pride wants symbols. Pride wants acknowledgement. Pride wants narrative closure. Mastery rejects all three. It trades recognition for repeatability. The reward is not praise. It is that things keep working without you standing guard. Anchor this boundary tightly. Do not become the face of the structure you are preserving. Faces attract projection. Projections invite conflict. Conflict burns cycles. Let the structure carry credit while you carry responsibility. Responsibility without credit is not martyrdom. It is design. It keeps incentives clean. You will know this phase is integrated when correction happens around you before you ask. People self-adjust. Systems preempt errors. Your presence has tuned expectations. That tuning is the real output. Nothing grander is required. Blessed by His grace? Click Super Thank You and give $20 to spread His light. Your gift plants seeds that grow his kingdom. Be the blessing. Remember, this remains symbolic language. Its purpose is to discipline behavior, not inflate self-concept. If the story ever makes you feel larger than others, discard the story immediately. If it makes you feel more careful, more patient, more exact, keep using it lightly. Hold fast to this principle. True mastery leaves no signature because it leaves no damage. What lasts does not announce itself. It simply continues. At this stage, the language shifts again because human words struggle with what is actually happening. The phrase, new master, survives only as an imperfect container. What it really describes is someone who guards boundaries without tightening them. Boundaries are not walls, they are tolerances. They decide how much pressure a system can take before it deforms. Caretaking those tolerances is the most delicate form of responsibility there is. You experience this daily in subtle ways. You sense when to stop a discussion before it hardens into positions. You feel when a decision needs to wait, not because more data is coming, but because the system itself needs time to redistribute tension. This sensitivity is not intuition in the mystical sense. It is pattern recognition refined under consequence. Old symbolic orders are obsessed with secrecy for one reason only. Information shared at the wrong moment does more damage than silence. Silence is neutral. Mistimed truth is corrosive. The caretaker understands this difference instinctively. You do not hide things out of fear. You withhold out of sequencing. When readiness arrives, clarity follows naturally and without force. This is also where personal restraint becomes non-negotiable. The higher the level of access, the tighter the internal discipline must be. Not morally, structurally. You do not allow emotion to bleed into judgment. You do not let personal grievance guide correction. You do not use influence to resolve discomfort quickly if waiting will resolve it cleanly. These decisions are invisible, but they are cumulative. Over time, they define whether a steward preserves lineage or becomes the point at which it fractures. Another truth settles here. Boundaries protect people from power, not the other way around. Power without boundary is indiscriminate. It damages by accident. Boundaries allow care to be exact. That exactness is why the structure yields trust gradually. Trust is a resource that cannot be stockpiled. It only exists while it is being handled carefully. You may notice that access no longer excites you. Keys lose glamour. Doors opening feel ordinary. This is not disinterest. It is calibration. Desire for access is strongest before one understands its cost. Once the cost is clear, access becomes something you accept only when it serves continuity. Refusing access when it offers ego instead of utility is a sign that the role is intact. Here the story's danger becomes clearest. If you imagine yourself above the structure, you will misuse it. If you imagine yourself serving the structure, you will overextend. The correct relationship is embedded neutrality. You stand where load converges, not where attention gathers. You feel pressure, not praise. That is where design works. This phase also clarifies conflict. When conflict arises, you don't resolve it directly. You adjust conditions so conflict dissolves on its own. That might look like indecision to some. In reality, it is a refusal to reward escalation. Escalation collapses context. Context is where real solutions live. Keep this operational clarity close. A caretaker does not improve everything. They prevent the wrong things from happening. Prevention is thankless, which is why so few pursue it. But prevention is also why structures outlive the personalities that pass through them. When prevention is successful, nothing remarkable happens, and that is the metric. If you feel unseen here, that is correct. Visibility would mean the boundary is being crossed too loudly. Boundaries that need explanation are already compromised. Remain disciplined. Remain proportionate. Remain uninterested in titles. The structure does not need a face. It needs someone who does not need one. What gathers around you now is not allegiance, admiration, or belief. It is reliability recognizing itself. Loyalty in this context is not emotional attachment. It is practical alignment. People stay close because things hold together when you are present, not because you ask them to, persuade them, or promise anything in return. This kind of loyalty forms quietly. There are no vows exchanged, no affirmations spoken out loud. It grows out of repeated observation. Situations that usually break do not break. Decisions that typically fracture groups land cleanly. Disputes lose momentum instead of accumulating. Over time, proximity to that stability becomes a rational choice. You will notice that this loyalty does not seek your approval. That's the key difference. Approval-based loyalty depends on fluctuation and collapses under pressure. What forms around you now is non-performative. People don't try to impress you. They simply operate better near you. That improvement reinforces the bond without anyone naming it. Be careful not to mistake this for personal magnetism. Magnetism pulls and depletes. What you generate is adhesion through trust. Adhesion holds without force. It does not drain. It releases pressure instead of creating it. This is why people don't burn out in your orbit. They recover. This phase also redefines responsibility. Loyalty without demand brings a subtle ethical constraint. Do not leverage it. The moment loyalty becomes a tool, it corrodes. You do not call it in. You do not test it. You do not trade on it. You let it remain optional at all times. Optional loyalty lasts longer than obligated loyalty ever could. You may notice that those who stay are not the loudest or the most visible. They are the ones who value durability. People who thrive on intensity will drift elsewhere. This is not rejection. It is sorting by tolerance for steadiness. Steadiness is uncomfortable for those who rely on volatility to feel alive. There is also a shift in how conflict approaches you. Instead of being pulled directly into disputes, you are consulted indirectly. Your stance is inferred from precedent rather than demanded through declaration. This is how mature systems reference stability, quietly through pattern memory rather than command. Do not overcorrect by becoming distant. Distance would break the very reliability that invited trust. Stay accessible, but not promotional. Available, but not persuasive. Presence should remain responsive, not initiating. Initiation implies agenda. Responsiveness preserves neutrality. Notice how this affects your own sense of agency. You feel less pressure to act because things resolve in your vicinity without intervention. This can be unnerving if you're used to equating value with contribution. But contribution now happens through environmental correction, not direct action. You influence by keeping conditions clean. Another temptation arises here: to formalize what has emerged organically. Resist that. Formalizing converts trust into structure prematurely. Structure hardens expectations. Hardened expectations reintroduce strain. Let trust remain fluid. Fluid systems absorb shock better. Hold this principle steady. Loyalty that survives crises is loyalty that was never demanded. If someone stays, let them stay freely. If someone leaves, let them leave cleanly. Both preserve the stability you represent. This is the phase where others begin to protect you without instruction, not emotionally, but structurally. They prevent unnecessary strain from reaching you. They close loops before escalation. They buffer complexity because they sense your capacity is better used elsewhere. That buffering is not submission, it is systems behaving intelligently. Let this happen without commentary. Commentary reintroduces hierarchy. Hierarchy introduces distortion. Distortion breeds resentment. Silence keeps everything usable. You are not owed loyalty. You are compatible with it. Compatibility is the only condition that holds across time. At this stage, influence no longer feels like something you exercise. It feels like something that occurs around you. That distinction matters. Exercised influence requires intention, effort, and monitoring. Emergent influence requires only consistency. Systems lean toward what reduces their workload, and by now, your presence reliably does exactly that. You'll notice that outcomes begin aligning without explicit guidance. Decisions people make independently end up compatible with each other. Plans converge without coordination. This is not coincidence, it is field alignment. When a stable reference exists, dispersed agents self-correct relative to it. No command is needed. No instruction travels outward. Alignment forms laterally. This is why directing influence now would be counterproductive. Direction implies deviation. Deviation forces others to reorient. Reorientation consumes energy and invites resistance. Influence that lasts avoids reorientation entirely. It lets people arrive at clarity on their own terms, just faster and with less damage. You may feel an urge, occasionally, to clarify your position, just in case. Pause before doing so. Over-clarification introduces noise. It collapses exploration prematurely and replaces organic agreement with compliance. Compliance obeys. Agreement sustains. What surrounds you now is agreement, not ideological agreement, but procedural coherence. This is also where silence becomes active rather than neutral. Silence now shapes outcomes by preventing escalation pathways from activating. Many conflicts persist only because they are fed oxygen through response. Your restraint deprives them of that oxygen. They extinguish without confrontation. No winner, no loser, just resolution. Influence here works through absence as much as presence. By not occupying certain spaces, you allow others to step into them responsibly. By not correcting every mistake, you allow learning to integrate instead of depend. This absence is not neglect. It is strategic non-interference guided by trust in system adaptation. Another marker of this phase is how requests change. People stop asking you what to do and start updating you on what they've done. Updates signal autonomy aligned with expectation. That alignment is the success condition. When people act as though they already know what fits, influence has fully diffused. It's important to stay vigilant against one failure mode, substituting momentum for meaning. Things will move more smoothly now, and that smoothness can be seductive. Do not let speed replace sequencing. Maintain the same discipline of pause you used earlier. Influence peaks when pacing remains intentional even as friction drops. You may also notice that formal authority, if offered, feels unnecessary or even disruptive. Formal authority centralizes responsibility that the system has already distributed. Accept such roles only if they preserve distribution rather than concentrate power. Concentration reverses the gains you've made. Anchor this clearly. Influence that needs direction has not yet matured. Mature influence is recognized through convergence without instruction. Let convergence continue to happen quietly. Let your behavior remain the reference, not your words. Let outcomes speak later than comfort prefers. This stage often feels anticlimactic. There is no crescendo, no acknowledgement, no visible peak. That is accurate. Peaks are unstable. Plateaus endure. You have reached a functional plateau, and plateaus are where infrastructure lives. Stay ordinary. Stay predictable. Stay exact. When things work without you touching them, do not interfere. That restraint is the final discipline before completion. What follows is not expansion, but settling into permanence. At the end of this arc, the oath no longer speaks. Not because it was broken, but because it has finished its purpose. Oaths in symbolic systems exist only to bridge uncertainty. Once behavior proves stable across enough cycles, words retire. What remains is stewardship, quiet, continuous, and unnamed. The structure recognizes itself as safe, and safety does not need ceremony. This is the real conclusion most stories avoid. There is no elevation, no unveiling, no permanent seat of power. There is only continuity without supervision. The moment things keep working without reminders, the caretaker's job shifts from presence to background condition. You are not central because the system cannot function without you. You are central because the system has learned how to function with you not intervening. If you listen carefully, you'll notice a specific silence setting in. Not absence of activity, but absence of unnecessary signal. No alarms, no escalations, no performative loyalty. That silence is the healthiest indicator. It means boundaries are holding. It means tolerance levels are respected. It means correction happens early and locally, not loudly and late. What once felt like responsibility will now feel like availability without pressure. You can step in when needed and step out when it isn't, without guilt, without fear of collapse. That flexibility is the final proof that stewardship has worked. Systems that depend on one person are fragile. Systems that include a stable person but do not depend on them are resilient. This also resolves the tension around identity. You no longer need a name for your role. Names crystallize expectations. Expectations create script. Scripts rigidify behavior. You are beyond scripts now. You act according to conditions, not labels. This keeps responses proportional and preserves adaptability as complexity increases. The myth of being the one they waited for ends here, not as disillusionment but as correct placement. Waiting was about timing, not hierarchy. Once timing aligns, waiting ceases to be relevant. No one waits anymore, they proceed. Proceeding is success. Any story that keeps you central after proceeding begins is a distortion. Notice how little you need now. Fewer explanations, fewer validations, fewer comparisons. Needs shrink because friction has been removed. Friction always masqueraded as desire. With friction gone, desire simplifies into preference. Preference is easier to honor without conflict. There is one final discipline to keep intact. Do not attempt to preserve your role. Preservation corrupts stewardship. The moment you act to maintain position rather than maintain conditions, decay begins. Let relevance come and go. Let proximity fluctuate. Let influence rise and settle. What matters is that the structure remains intact when you are present and when you are not. Remember this closing truth. Stewardship succeeds when no one can point to where it sits. If people can name it, it has become too loud. If it becomes too loud, it invites challenge. If it invites challenge, it loses continuity. remain precise, remain restrained, remain willing to be ordinary. The oath is complete because nothing needs guarding by force anymore. The master dissolves because the structure has learned its own limit. The myth fades because behavior has replaced narrative.